Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I have the pleasure to welcoming you at our webinar. Today, we will present the results of the housing chapter and to launch interactive dashboard with the related data. Housing is the four policy area covered by our benchmarking study 2022-2025. We are doing four, and in very close cooperation with the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relation of Netherlands. Before I present the study objective, research areas, time frame, and our team, I would like to thank Mr. Martin Eskenazi for all his input in the preparation of the chapter, and I would at the same time would like to thank all of you to find the time to join us today. We will start with the presentation of the benchmarking study, policy areas, countries covered, as well what we are doing now and what will happen in the future. After that, we will continue with the presentation of fundings of the study, and we will present as well our dashboard. So our APA team will show you exactly how our interactive tool works, where to find it, what kind of data we can find there, and of course, how to use it in an effective way. And as already mentioned before, we can realize our benchmarking study thanks to the grant from the Ministry of Interior and Kingdom Relation of the Netherlands. And we are implementing this project in a very close cooperation with the ministry, and thanks to that, I have also a pleasure to present project leader from the ministry, Mr. Frans van Dongen. So, Frans, thank you very much for being today with us. And I would like to give you the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivona. It's great to work with you and the whole APA team on this international benchmark program on public performance. And I warmly welcome you all at this APA webinar for the study results regarding the public domain housing and the launch of the data dashboard for this domain. My name is Frans van Dongen, as Ivona explained, and I'm a program manager at the Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations in the Netherlands on public performance. And I've also been the ministry's representative in the APA's Board of Governance during the last 10 years, and a Dutch member in the steering committee for the European Public Sector Awards, which is an award scheme for public sector excellence of APA. The Dutch Ministry of the Interior has already a long tradition in international benchmarking of public performance, going back to the 19th in the last century. And we are very happy that we could establish a fruitful relationship with APA for a couple of years, for a 4 years benchmark program for 35 countries. We strongly believe that policymakers can learn a lot from international comparisons of public performance in different kind of functional policy domains. And this is not about winners and score lists, it is about identifying mechanisms and policy systems and interventions and contexts that are relevant to become more successful and get better public value, better outcomes, more efficiency, and more satisfied citizens and entrepreneurs. And a part of international learning from best practices, it is also valuable to learn from examples of underperformance or failures. It is helpful to learn why specific mechanisms or interventions don't work in specific contexts, and to prevent that these failures will be repeated. Systematically learning from failures is of great value. Further, it is of the greatest importance to bring these kind of study results to the attention of policymakers and stimulate them to use them for the purpose of policy design. And therefore, we welcome very much the initiative of APA to organize webinars like this one and to disseminate the study results. We also welcome the initiative of APA to give full, flexible, and user-friendly online access to the data of the study results. And I'm happy that we will get a demonstration of this online dashboard for the housing data. And it is also interesting to see that even the European Commission has started initiatives that support this way of working with the program Building Capacity for Evidence-Based Policymaking. Actually, next week I will be participating in a workshop of this initiative in The Hague. I would also like to thank especially my colleague Martijn Eskenazi, who has contributed a lot to this initiative, and of course to our research partner who is also present here, Kees Dol, and his colleagues for the outstanding achievements with their international benchmark study on housing, and the willingness of Kees, of course, to be present here to the results, to present the results here. And to conclude, I'm very happy that this study and the conference about the results last year has been a driver and contributor for the development of a European housing policy network to promote cross-border collaboration, networking, and exchange of experience on housing policies among interested EU member states. Yesterday and today, we welcomed this network for its first meeting in Rotterdam. And this is, of course, where we do this work for. It is collaboration, exchange of expertise and experience, and get better results for citizens and entrepreneurs. I hope you all will have an inspiring webinar, and give the floor back to Ivona. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Frans, for your kind words and our fruitful cooperation. It's a great honor to work with you on almost a daily basis. I propose that we continue with the presentation of our APA team. And I would like to give the floor to Miranda, and if we can continue with Paolo and Bjorn later on.
Thank you. So I'm Miranda. I work as a senior research officer at APA in the area of better regulation, but also I've had a lot to do with the aspects related to data in the context of this benchmarking study. I think I've been working on it for the last 2-3 years. And I'm excited to present our latest dashboard a little bit later.
Good afternoon. My name is Paolo Giovannetti. I'm a research officer here at APA, and I worked on the benchmarking study since the beginning of my time here, first for what concerned the writing of the public administration chapter, and then all aspects related to the publication of the following chapters, and especially for what concerns data and their visualization, mainly using Power BI dashboards, which we will present very shortly.
Hello, my name is Bjorn Helbling. I work at APA since nearly 3 years as a digitalization officer, and since last year as well as a research officer. And I joined this lovely team during the phase when we started to develop the dashboards. So and we're really glad to show them to you later.
Thank you very much. I think it's my turn to present myself. My name is Ivona Karvot, and I'm working since 16 years in the European Institute of Public Administration as senior lecturer, and I'm also honored to be a project leader of this benchmarking study. And thanks to that, I have the pleasure to work with Frans, our benchmarking team, and with best experts from some very prestigious universities and research institutes. And so we see our team. We know already Frans van Dongen, the project leader, our benchmarking team, and I propose that we continue with the presentation of the benchmarking study results, policy areas, countries covered, etc. So as we can see, the most important objective of our benchmarking study is to analyze the performance of public administration in 10 different policy areas and in 35 different countries. So apart from the European Union member states, we also cover Iceland, Norway, Switzerland, United Kingdom, Australia, Canada, United States. So it's quite broad list of the countries we are working on. And we also agreed with the ministry that our benchmarking study 2020-25 will cover in-depth analysis of 10 different policies. You can see on the slide. So from public administration, education, social security system, health, sport, culture, housing, which is our subject of the meeting today. So as we can see, it's a really very broad project. And I would like to say that our benchmarking study, it's already the 4th edition. And the first report was published in 2004, another one 2012, and the 3rd report was published in 2015 and was prepared by the Dutch Research Institute, SCP. And we agreed with the Ministry of Interior during the negotiation process that our role will be from one side to update the 3rd report, and from the other side also broaden its perspective. So we evaluate the effectiveness, efficiency, cost effectiveness, but also we added new elements like, for example, satisfaction and trust of citizen enterprises and other relevant stakeholders regarding available products, services provided by public administration. And as we can see, we already started the preparation process of the benchmarking study in 2021, when we exactly prepared the whole scope of the program, we negotiated the content, etc. But apart from that, we already made the research related to the existing secondary resources of the literature and also available data. We prepared 2 reports, and because we broaden the perspective and the analysis of the all policy areas, we agreed also with the ministry that we will split the whole benchmarking study into sub-studies. So in 2022, we started first sub-study with the kickoff meeting, and we covered 4 policy areas: public administration, education, social safety, and housing. And today we will learn what kind of fundings we had. In 2022, we covered additional 3 policies areas. Right now, in the current year, we are covering another 3 policy areas, and 2025, we will do the update of the all policy areas and publish the final report. So as I already mentioned before, during our study, we always start with kickoff meeting in the beginning, and after we have separate meetings with authors of different chapters, also ministries involved in the preparation process, of course, with our team. And we also, I would say, have additional meetings whenever it's necessary, directly with authors, just to be sure that the content and the data we will present at the end of the study or sub-study will be exactly what we need, and that the ministry is satisfied with the results, and also, of course, policymakers. As already mentioned, we are doing the quantitative and qualitative analysis using already existing source of information. When we are talking about data, we are using data from 2007, 2020. However, whenever it's possible and the data is available, we also are using much more recent data. And as mentioned before, one of the most important element of the benchmarking study, apart from the research and fundings in each policy area, it's interactive dynamic data navigation tool. And today, with this dissemination activity, we are launching the dashboard for housing chapter, which is providing insights of the most important data at the glance. And our dashboard is publicly available on our website. I will send you, and I will show you in 1 second where exactly to find all information. And so today, as we can see, we are launching the dashboard for housing, but in September for economy, and in November for social security. And as I promised just in a second before, where to find all information. When you enter European Institute of Public Administration website, like already on the top, we can see public sector benchmarking. When we push the button and we enter there, then we can find the sub-study and we can download 2022, including, of course, the housing chapter, and also sub-study 2023. They are available, and all dashboards we already launched until today. Only few quick words about current work and the future. So as I mentioned before, right now, this year, we started with the kickoff meeting in January, and we are under preparation of the sub-study 2024, covering 3 different policy areas. This year, we planned 5 different dashboard and dissemination activities during the 2024. And and also we already started in January the preparation for the update of the entire study in 2025, including, of course, housing chapter. And the fundings of 2024 will be presented in final conference in February 2025. So as mentioned, and you can see here, in 2024-5, we will update the entire study and publish all fundings of the, and I would say updated data during our conference, final conference planned in February 2026. And during this conference, we will also present all fundings and updates of the housing chapter. So I would like to thank for your attention, and I propose that we continue with the presentation of the fundings of the housing chapter. And I have a pleasure to present our expert, Dr. Kees Dow from Rigo, Institute, and I would like to please give you the floor.
Okay, well. Okay, again, my name is Kees Dol. I participate with APA on the housing chapter, which was a very welcome and pleasant workload. So, okay, first of all, I think I should say that it's Miranda and Paolo and Bjorn's and of course Iwona's time to shine at this moment, because they have compiled all the data that my colleague and I found and put that in a very nice dashboard. However, we found a lot of data on public sector performance, or rather that was the aim, and I'll go to the next slide already. Like I said, we have been looking for all the available inputs, which is usually monetary, by public funding on housing allowances or housing quality or housing availability. Of course, we only could find the general data. So we didn't have the time to look into all the public sector accounts, and you should see this as somewhat more of an exploration. So again, first of all, we have a lot of data, which is now on one platform, which is very good. Anyone interested in housing policies can take a look over there. Right now, the housing chapter will give you some guidance, because many times you will see differences, but it's always a bit hard to really assess where those come from. So, and I will go through this quite quickly, but one of the complications in really seeing what the impact of the public sector is that housing is often provided in a mix by the state, by market parties such as private rental companies or project developers, but also, for instance, in Belgium and in Germany, there are quite a few households that provide their own dwelling. They buy a plot of land and have an architect and a construction company put that dwelling on that housing plot. And to make it even a bit more complicated, there is also a third sector, which is not state, not market, but non-profit and is somewhere in between. So by merely looking at how much a state provides in terms of housing allowances or investment in new housing, it doesn't always translate into certain outputs. It doesn't mean that if a state spends much, that the output per country is necessarily much better. Also, households and market parties can, their involvement can have a certain effect on housing quality. Okay. Then, so state, households, community, and market. So state, we often think of these large housing complexes. With the market, especially here in the Netherlands, we think of terraced row houses provided by developers, which households can buy. Or if you look at the household provision of housing, you look at maybe collective housing, but also many times in Belgium or in Southern Europe, for instance, individual houses developed by these households themselves. Yeah. So, third sector is intermediate. In the Netherlands, we have a lot of these dwellings, about 30% of the total housing stock. The above picture in Amsterdam, nicely maintained, but quite old. And on the left, more outside of the, in the countryside, where you have dwellings in a row, also nicely maintained. Okay, I'll speed up a bit now. So this you can see, we provide all the slides for you. But what we look at with our analysis is the 3 pillars of housing policy. You can also read that back in the report. So this is the approach that all housing analysts take: quality, availability, and affordability. And if there are few dwellings available, that may also impact on affordability, yeah? High house prices. So what you also need to take into account if you look at public investment, if you look at all those data that Miranda and her colleagues are going to present in a moment, you will see that some countries differ a bit. It doesn't necessarily mean that those countries are performing poorly, because there is also path dependency. So in my country, in the Netherlands, in the 1960s and 1970s and even 1980s, they invested huge amounts of money into non-profit housing by the third sector. So those dwellings are there now, and they are of a decent quality, and you don't really see much direct investment by the public sector again in the Netherlands, maybe as opposed to other countries which really need to invest because they have poor quality dwellings. Yeah. So that's housing quality. And another case of housing quality, and this is just some exploration. You can read much more about it in the report, but there is an indicator by Eurostat, which is called severe housing deprivation. People live in small quarters or too small for their household. They may have some quality problems like leakage or damp or bad flooring. And if you combine that, you get some indicator. And you always have to be a bit careful while reading it because Western Europe and Scandinavia fits the picture a bit. Some Eastern European countries also fit the picture, but then you have an outlier, Denmark. I'm still curious where that comes from, but you always have to take a bit of caution with that. Yeah, but that at least fits the picture. But then we look at housing quality. And we cannot really make any correlation with public spending, direct public spending on housing quality. We don't have the data, or the data are fuzzy. So we looked at alternatives, and we looked at, well, if you relate it to income levels, yes, you see that Western Europe and Scandinavia are performing a bit better because households just have much more money to invest in housing. Also owner-occupiers who aren't supported in any way. We also found some relation with Gini factor. So is the distribution of income throughout a country high or better? Is it more flat? Then we also see that in general, the housing quality is better. So for instance, UK has a very high average income, but it's unequally distributed. So there is a sector which is not that well maintained, as opposed to Scandinavia, which is traditionally very much known for its level income, and also willingness to transfer income to lower households, to lower income households. So that's just one. Read more about it in the report. Housing availability, that's another one where indicators are available, but still overcrowding is a complicated indicator. You can read about it in the report. I'll speed up a bit now. Homelessness is also a complicated indicator. You can see differences, but many times the definitions per country are very different. Proportion of vacant dwellings is also another one. And population of young adults living in the parental home is also one. So here we look at overcrowded households, which differentiates quite strongly, just as an example, and which fits more or less the picture that we have. But I would like to take you to, first of all, the proportion of vacant dwellings, because in some countries you see quite a few vacant dwellings and you would say, well, that means that there's housing available. But as also Ivona knows very well from her experience, if you've lived in Spain for some time, there are cities which are really struggling with housing shortages. And when you get to the countryside, you see vacant dwellings. So also that as an indicator doesn't always, isn't always very handy to use. Yeah. However, we found a population of young adults living in the parental home. And that's a nice one to just tell a bit about, because we've seen that increasing throughout Europe, and also actually in the USA and Australia, which aren't in this picture, but we've seen that increase throughout Europe, which should give some indication of maybe less housing availability, but also maybe student loans, privatization of higher education has played a role. Young people need to take out loans, so they cannot fend for themselves for quite some time and cannot even buy a house because they still have outstanding loan. What we see, and especially for the younger people, that could be nice, the proportion of young adults living in the parental home, and I'm speaking about people 25 to 30 years, is decidedly lower in Scandinavia and somewhat higher in Southern Europe and also in Eastern Europe. And we over here in the Netherlands take some middle ground. That may have to do something with culture, that you only leave the parental house when you get married. That can also have something to do with a broader social security system. If you cannot hold a decent, stable job, you can also not buy a house or live on your own. So those are also the other public sector themes that we would like to explore in the future. Maybe also housing as a pension could also be further explored. But what we did see is that there is a strong relation with the size of the so-called social or non-profit rental sector. You can read it in the report, but to me, that was one of the nicer findings. So those countries that do have a large social non-profit rental sector, which is accessible, still have quite low rates of young adults living with their parents. And even though there is an increase everywhere in all countries, you still see marked differences. Yeah. Then that's another one, and I think I'm running out of time, Ivona. No? Okay, I can still go on. Well, and then another one which we just stumbled on a bit as we explore this. It's not a direct government input, but we looked at land use restriction. And land use restriction, is also a relative indicator, because any government that knows that there is a housing shortage will want to address that, so they will make land available. But land use restriction can imply that it takes a bit longer to increase your construction levels. And here we explored a bit, like in the post 2009 global financial crisis, construction levels really soared down. It came to a halt. How much time does it take to get to those pre-2009 construction levels? We just tried to correlate that a bit, but we did not find a very strong relation. It was only minor. And of course, why am I presenting this? Because I myself think, well, we now show that we've explored it, but for the time being, we haven't found that strong relationship. And I think that's also how we should go further with these kinds of studies. We find something, and maybe then together with Frans and the people from the ministry and EPA say, this needs to be addressed a bit further. That's what's also in the report. Some of the present problems in housing policy, we dug a bit into that by looking at regulation of the private rental sector, and also ways for governments to stimulate home ownership by young first-time buyers. Yeah, so that's what I'm telling a little bit about now, and then I will just stop, because like I said, it's time to shine for Miranda, Paolo, and Bjorn. So home ownership rates, relatively small traditionally in Scandinavia. Just like I said, they have quite large social rental sectors which are available. It's larger in Eastern and Central Europe, but also there you have to be a bit careful by drawing conclusions, because in the past they had communism with a lot of social and public rental sector. After that, they wanted to get rid of any idea of communism. I'm exaggerating a bit, and try to sell off or sometimes even give to the tenants those dwellings. That is also a problem right now, because there are many lower incomes in high-rise complexes which really struggle to maintain these dwellings and also make them sustainable. So there we are again, significant social public rental sector. I'll skip these, and I'll also just tell a couple more things about what you could do to raise home ownership amongst first-time buyers. That could be a myriad of public sector interventions like tax relief or mortgage interest. Although if you do that for everyone, it's only going to increase prices. So you have to think about who that is for. You could also look at mortgage guarantees, where you don't need to pay upfront part of the house price, but where the government gives you a guarantee and you can just take out the entire loan. That's very Dutch and very Scandinavian. Home saving schemes, where you first save, is also a good route. It's more used in Germany and Austria, where you save, but where you get some kind of gift or subsidy from the government itself. It's two routes, that you can either use. Okay, then we have also seen a marked decline in home ownership rates, especially amongst younger people. We have investigated that also, and read the report and we will shed some more light on that. The rise of the private rental sector, which has become very tight right now and has high prices. It also relates again to job security, and also mortgage market regulation. You cannot get as much money as previously before the financial crisis, which is good because it's less risky, but it does also impede a bit access to home ownership. So there I will just quit and give the floor to the others, and you will get all these slides. Good.
Okay. Thank you very much, Kees, for this very inspiring and insightful presentation. It was a real pleasure to work with you during
Likewise.
2022, and we are looking forward to work again in 2025. And and thank you very much for being today with us. And it was already mentioned quite a few times that we will present the data related to housing. So thank you very much for a great job to Miranda, Paolo, and Bjorn, because it was a really good job done on the dashboard. So the floor is yours, and thank you very much again.
Thank you. So I'm just going to share my screen, and the idea is to present, where the dashboard is and the functionalities that it has. Of course, the point is that you yourselves are able to go through and play with the data, see anything that might be more interesting. And so we won't be presenting the information because Kees has just done that himself. So I believe you can see my screen now. I'm on the APA website. Ivana mentioned that there's a tab that is completely dedicated to the benchmarking study. And here you can learn a little bit more about the study itself. You can download the sub-study, which from 2022, which includes the chapter that we're discussing today, but also you may be interested in looking at our more recent sub-study that was published, that was done in 2023. And then we also have here all of the different dashboards that have already been launched. And then we also have the upcoming events. So check it, keep this website in mind. Maybe you're interested in future dashboards and you'll find them all published here on this page. I'm just going to quickly open another dashboard for the public administration chapter, because I want to just highlight that aside from the dashboard, which we have there, you can also rewatch the events from each of the different sessions. So hear from the experts, but also to see the functionality that might be more specific to the policy area that we're discussing.
But they all follow the same overarching structure.
Right. So I'm on the main page and I'm on the upcoming events, and then I can click on the housing and it will take me to the housing dashboard. Here we have the home page of the dashboard. I'm just going to scroll up a little bit. And there are several journeys throughout the dashboard, because we want to make sure that you can interact with the data in many different ways and the ways that work best for you. So we have 3 different functionalities here. Firstly, a more step-by-step walk through the data, which is here represented by the stylized framework in which the chapter discusses the different elements around housing. There's also a very free-form page which allows you to interact with the data in a much more fluid way. And then we also have a page related to relationships, so you can explore potential correlations between the various indicators that were discussed today. So I'm going to focus on the more step-by-step journey through the data. Here, I could say, for example, that I'm interested in the contextual factors. And so by clicking on that button, I get taken to a sort of landing page, which discusses what these contextual factors mean in this context and the various indicators that were analyzed in the chapter. Say I'm interested in looking at outright home ownership, then I can click there and I can see what it looks like in the context in a map. Here, a darker color corresponds to a higher score. And if I scroll in, we can see that home ownership. So you can basically see that presented here. So this is home outright ownership. And here, this one is the second map relates to the outright ownership in the lowest income decile. So that is one element that you can look at through the report. Now, at the bottom of the screen, there is sort of navigation buttons. And we also have the stylized version of the framework. And I've looked at the contextual factors, but I may also be interested in looking at outcomes. And so by clicking at the bottom of the screen, I get to the page around outcomes, and I can then look at the indicators related to that. Here, I might be interested in housing deprivation. And so by clicking there, I can see more about it. Here we have a sort of menu where I can look at the different countries that I might be interested in. So say I'm interested in looking at housing deprivation in the Netherlands. So I'm just scrolling through, going to the Netherlands, and if I click on that, then I see that the graphs have slightly changed. Here they show the level of the housing deprivation in the Netherlands, that being the country, in the sample of all the countries looked at within this benchmarking study, but also the region, Western Europe. So I can compare how the Netherlands is performing against both the whole sample average as well as the region. So this is it's similar. We use different graphs throughout depending on the data itself. What might best show you and you can learn best from. And so that's the more step-by-step journey through the dashboard. I'm going to go back to the home page using the navigation button. And I will hand over to Bjorn, who will describe the step-by-step page.
Okay, thank you, Miranda. So yes, we had now the journey following the report. If you get now some inspirations and want to explore yourself the data that is underlying that benchmarking study, we gave you two possibilities. Polo will show the third, and I'll jump briefly into the overview version. And yes, please use that as, or can be useful as like a starting point to find ideas about for questions that we can later more research in detail, but to find ideas to maybe find some initial views. This is like a good place to be. So this page is a bit crowded because we wanted to give you as much freedom as possible. On the right upper side, you see the indicators themselves. They are grouped into the three overarching categories. And it will always show you what sort of measurement unit is used inside of one. So if we pick one, for example, the home ownership in the lowest decile, you see, first of all, directly an overview table where it is like nicely split up. We use the coloring scheme. It's just darker means higher, depending on what sort of measurement it is. It's not a value judgment. It just means the number is higher, and it goes from dark blue to light. There you could then zoom in on the right side. Okay, I'm more interested in just Central and Eastern Europe, for example, and it will then jump. But you can also then zoom in into the countries that you're in particular interested in. And as you see here in other dashboards, there was yearly data for the whole time frame available. Here it's focused more on most indicators focus on singular points of measurement. This is why you have displayed here when this measurement is taken. You can also look then at the detailed figures themselves, or if you want to get a more intuitive view on things, you can see it here. Again, dark just means higher, and it will also give you then the average values, which, because it's 1 year, it will be the true value. There's only like a couple of indicators that I come in a second to it, where there are more than 1 year or different years. You see also automatically displayed highest and lowest value, the sourcing where this the underlying data is coming from. And if you hover above countries, it will also give you like the particular information to that country. So did I manage to zoom? And if you're not 100% sure whether the context of a certain measurement, you can also always click here, and then you will get a brief explanation about the context of that measure. And we can also, for example, we jump now to one of the measures. There are more years available, but you will immediately see if that changes. Because, for example, here, the homeless population, as already mentioned by Kees, it's not an easy measurement to take because they use different standards, but also different intervals. So you see here a number of years that are inside the calculation. So if that is not a singular year, you can also immediately see on the detailed table from which year, from which country that measurement came. There's also one other indicator where 2 years are measured. With that one, you would need to be cautious because it will take the average. But it's always, maybe Paolo, should we mention it briefly, the indicator that was?
Oh yeah, it was, and I think it was under contextual factors. It was below, yeah, outstanding residential loans.
No, you
Yeah.
see he's the one who dived deepest into the data and contributed to a massive extent to that dashboard. So also an internal thank you to Paolo.
Mm.
As you see here, it displays automatically 2 years. And because it also states these are averages, be careful with these numbers because it automatically took the average out of that. But that's the only indicator where you need to be a bit more careful with. The rest is relatively easy overviewable. So, and with this little place to start your maybe to find some inspiration for your own research, I'll give my place now to Paolo to present the next one.
Yeah, thank you very much, Bjorn. So we can go back to the initial page and we can go into the final way that is available to visualize the data. And so as the title suggests, this page is focused on relationships between indicators, whereas the previous page was mostly focused on indicators one by one, looking at them one by one and maybe making comparisons between countries. But here, as I said, it's all about the relationships which are displayed by a correlation plot or a scatter plot, which takes a center stage on this page. As you can see on the right-hand side, it's possible to choose which indicator to display on the x-axis and which indicator to display on the y-axis. And of course, this can be done only by one indicator at a time for the x-axis and one indicator at a time for the y-axis. So let's say that we're interested in looking at, on the x-axis, the percentage of young adults, so between 25 and 29 years old, that are living with their parents. And then we can see on the y-axis the percentage of public housing or social housing, so the share of the housing stock which is either public or social housing. So as then we can see also displayed the year from which each indicator comes from, or from which the data comes from for both indicators. And so in this case, it's 2020 for both. So as you probably noticed, the scatter plot changed a little bit when I was selecting the indicators. And as you can see on the scatter plots, you have many dots, and each dot corresponds to a country, and it's situated at the intersection between the value of the indicator displayed on the x-axis and the value of the indicator displayed on the y-axis for that particular country. And moreover, the dots are colored according to the regional collocation of countries as displayed in the legend. So by having a first look, that's not always the case, but in this case, we can see a little bit of a, let's say, of a regional cluster, and indeed, and that's on the bottom right. So these are Southern European countries where generally you tend to have a higher percentage of 25 to 29-year-olds living with their parents. And at the same time, you have a very low percentage of the housing which is public or social housing. Whereas for what concerns, for example, Northern Europe and Western Europe, well, the data is a bit, or the dots are a bit more spread out, but you can tell that in general, yeah, those countries in those regions tend to have higher shares of public housing and lower shares of young adults living in the parental home. And this is also a little bit, connecting to what was just mentioned previously by Case. So this is, of course, and you can visually see that there is a negative relationship between these two indicators, meaning that generally speaking, or at least by looking at these two indicators, we can see that, let's say, living with parents is more common in countries where the public housing is, let's say, the social housing is not very offered in a very large, to a large extent, whereas where there is more availability of social housing, generally, the percentage of young adults who live with parents is generally lower. And this is also displayed more rigorously by the correlation coefficient, which is on the bottom right of the page. And so this numerically displays indeed the relationship between the two indicators as explained in the definition here. And so here the suggestion is that there is a relatively strong and negative relationship between the two indicators. But of course, as it was mentioned very clearly previously by Case, we should not look only at these two indicators because, for example, living with parents until a fairly advanced age could be related to also cultural factors and many other factors related to the economy and employment. And so this should not, indeed, as it's written here prominently, this should not be seen as a causal relationship, but it's just a correlation. So suggestion for a possible relationship between these two important indicators, which indeed could be the subject of further research and analysis, also as Case mentioned. So, and indeed, this is and now let's say we can conclude our presentation of the dashboard. Basically, this idea to look at the data, which hopefully you will do after this presentation, and potentially look at, in addition to the report, of course, the idea would be to look at possible suggestions for relationship between indicators which maybe haven't been looked at before, and ideally do more research and maybe even policy recommendations. So with that, I will hand it over to Miranda for the conclusion.
Nice, thank you. So the last thing on the dashboard is that at the end of this presentation, you'll be able to rewatch this presentations by Case, Ivona, Franz, and we also have a sort of suggestion area. So we invite you to go through the dashboard and give us feedback. And we, of course, have the next dashboard. We're going to launch it in September. So we look forward to seeing everyone for that. I just want to thank you all for being here. I want to thank Case and Franz for being here and presenting. And on behalf of Ivona and also the APA dashboard team and APA in general, I want to thank you for your presence.